forget all of our excitement over here. Okay, so can I call us to order? I think we're all here and all ready. We have one visitor. Hello, welcome, as we're starting here finally. So calling to order the, when we look at the agenda for tonight, just to make it clear, at 6 o'clock we'll go to the Act 46 discussion. We announced it in the paper just in case anybody specifically was coming for that. We want to do it at 6. And I believe that we want to spend some time looking at the budget, right, Frank?
Yes.
So, principals, do you feel like you have, would you like to go before Frank or after? Maybe I'll ask it that way.
I'd say before.
Before?
Yes.
Is that okay with the principals?
Sure, yeah.
All right, so then we'll take a motion to approve the
So moved.
consent agenda, the minutes. We have 2 minutes, remember that we resolved. And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so then we'll go down to, I guess, Deb is on the part of this.
So mine can be part of our later discussion, if that helps to kind of move things along.
Oh, is there anything you want to say publicly? Did we need to take a vote for you specifically today? Or we did that via email and we have to ratify it, I think. That was what we
Yes.
need, right?
That was for the non-federal waiver.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, I think you have to ratify.
So let's see how we can word that motion. Does anyone remember exactly?
That was for a grant application
It was,
process?
to request a non-federal waiver for
The
the
waiver,
required
yeah.
in-kind match for the current fiscal year.
Do you remember the number of
Was,
160?
Oh, I think I wrote it.
something thousand.
You have it right there? Just like to put the number in the...
Request for a waiver?
Yeah,
Yeah.
non-federal share waiver.
175,000 it looks like,
That's right.
right? You want to make that motion?
Okay, let's see. I move that we approve the waiver for,
Well,
request for waiver for non-federal share of match requirements with an estimated $175,000 as proposed by Deborah Gass, EES Director.
And a second on this? Second. And then just for clarity, we've done this via email, but we want to do it publicly as a ratification of that. And any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we'll get that back to you.
That's sort of kind of,
Okay. Did you have,
Just a couple of highlights. We have been working very diligently on our refunding application for the period that begins March 1st, 2016 to February 2017. And we can talk more about that later. We had a great all-staff meeting on this past Friday with Janine Fitzgerald, who has been working with us for now a year and a half on team building and group dynamics. So we had a very good session with her. And I think that's about it for now.
are you guys getting the reports by email? I'm not. So maybe we can check
Okay.
and see what's going on. The monthly report that we used to
No,
get?
I'm not getting it.
I don't think I'll get it.
I don't know if I'm pretty sure I did.
I don't-
I think
I
I
don't
got
remember.
2 things this month from ES. One was the vote and there was another, but it's worth checking.
Double check.
All right, thanks, Deb. Mark. Or no, Jerry, sorry. Going down over. Actually, you guys can all pass at one time if you want. And we don't have to wait.
They all look the same, how do you keep track?
We don't.
You didn't think of that, did you?
So November at Oak Grove, we haven't been here, the local report, students participating in chorus and the strings program, computer club, which we run about 3 sessions per year. Cleveland Youth Theater just started, so that's something that the 3 principals got together. We had an overwhelming number of students that were interested. I don't know if it was talked about last time, but they were interested in participating in the youth theater program. And so proportionally, we have 6 of our students, actually 5 students, and then 1 student was brought in by the New England Youth Theater to help out with the set and lighting and stuff like that. So that's why it shows 6 for us. And it just wanted principals to know that, because I agreed that Oakville would just do 5, but that's why we have 6. Okay. And tutoring is in full swing now, after school hours during the school year, and we are having our evening transportation for those students. A couple school-wide events that were mentioned in there. Also, that's not on your report is our 2 days of November in-service. We had all of our teachers were involved with universal design instruction. The universal design is really focused on how to teach, design lessons, make accommodations, modifications for your curriculum with all students in mind, regardless of what their reading level, what their other type of disabilities might be. And that was taught by Alicia Brandon, who used to be a special educator at BU 6. She was a coordinator at BU 6, and she is now up at Dartmouth. So she came back down to do that 2-day training with us, which was really very well received. What else was I mentioned? Oh, well, Mark was just asking if we're going to mention something about the grant. I don't know if Lyle wants to talk a little bit more about the grant. That actually, do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. Do you want me to jump in now?
Sure, that's great.
So we were offered through federal programs, Title I at the federal level, to pursue grants for each of our Title I schools. The grants for each of Oak Grove, Green, and Academy were approved. For Oak Grove and Green Street, it was for $45,000 approximately, and for Academy it was $65,000. And for Green Street, we'll be looking at a tech integrationist to come in and work with teachers, work with students, because they have a lot of technology. For Green Street, it's purchasing the rest of the Reading Street materials, so that will not be in our local budget next year, and beefing up technology so that all classrooms have smart boards and the number of Chromebooks, so that there'll be one-to-one second grade, is that right? Second grade, 2nd through 6th. So that also will not be in the local budget next year. And Academy's creating a parent liaison position, and this person will work with parents not in the school but going into places like Westgate or Moorcourt or different places where the person will meet with parents and try to engage parents in school type activities, gets parents to come into the school to participate, but meeting parents sort of on their own ground so that they'll be more comfortable working with school personnel. So the grants are to be spent between January and June of 2016, but I had to write what year 2 and year 3 would look like. It sounds like year 2 is a fairly definite, that we would continue with a year 2, and year 3 probable.
So for a position, like in Andy's case, it's an actual person you're hiring.
Yes.
So that
Also
person
for,
would be-
also for.
It is, it's a technology person.
Yeah. So we just put an ad in School Spring and then local on the district website for a technology integration specialist, just to kind of finish out this school year. And the plan with and I've worked with our tech committee, so the tech committee in our building will be the interview team. And the thought is, you bring in a lot of technology, and so you have a lot of technology coming into the building, and we as adults sometimes we're trying to keep up with how to use it effectively and to make your classroom
more rich with the technology. It's not just having the technology in front of them, but really how to utilize that, how to bring in make your curriculum kind of come alive with the use of technology. And that's oftentimes a skill that some of us that have been around education for a while don't necessarily have. And so that's what this person will be able to do, to be able to actually work in the classrooms, give some training after school at faculty meetings, work with students even. So there's a whole host of different ways in which we'll be using this person for the rest of this school year, and then we'll see what happens afterwards.
And a general question for the three of you, but like, I know there's certain teachers, just in my own experience as parents, that are really utilizing the technology in great ways. How does that sharing happen between the teachers, particularly maybe from one school to another?
Want to go first?
I can, yeah. So this year, even before we thought we were going to get the grant, we have technology buddies in the building. And so they're in the technology committee, they're all assigned. Plus there's a couple others that are really, really good around technology. And so they have agreed to say, you know, I can be like a mentor. And so that's somebody that I have a technology buddy. And so if I need help working on Google Sheets, for example, because I'm okay with Google Excel or with Excel, but if I have problem with Google Sheets, then I can go to my technology buddy and say, hey, can you help me with this or that? And so that's how some of that is shared.
Same for you, Mark?
A little different. We have a tech committee that meets monthly, really dynamic committee of teachers who use technology day in and day out. And you know, our staff meetings that we have throughout the year are essentially 90% of the time PD focused. So working on things that we're integrating into the school. So I rely on our tech committee to provide professional development during staff meetings, as well as team meetings. During our November in-service day, a couple of folks from the committee provided training to all the paraprofessionals in the building. So the focus of the committee is really reach out and provide PD. And as we come in from the break, what we talked about at our last meeting was doing some peer observation in each other's classrooms, focused on two things. One, Reading Street implementation, because it's a new program, and the other would be technology integration, because we got a lot of new technology in the building this year. So to support each other in that way, in terms of observing and then feedback and follow-up afterwards.
Well, we certainly could do a lot more training with folks, but our main training has been after-school staff meetings where people who have a particular expertise in their area, such as a Google Doc, will do. We've done a series of workshops after school. Mary's led some this year, but we've been doing them for several years. So that a lot of what teachers now do through Google Doc, a lot of the expectation in terms of how technology is in the classroom comes from those kinds of meetings or grade level meetings. I think we're looking for people who are probably outside of our building and district right now, for example, who have high level of expertise using electronic whiteboards. I know Mark and I have talked a bit about that there's a lot more that can be done. We just don't have anyone in our buildings and apparently in the area that we can find that offers that kind of training right now.
I guess I'm thinking too that there's that, like what I watched as a mom with my third grader, particularly when they all had iPads at Academy, and as a third grader, that the teacher was fantastic at finding programs and she'd send them on to the parents, and I'm wondering if that's shared somehow. I mean, she was utilizing them all the time in the classroom. So when she gets done finding something like that, is there a method to share that with, say, the folks at Green Street and Oak Grove, or even with the other third grade teachers? And then does it share throughout the supervisory union, Ron? And, I mean, is it, and I know the whiteboard that somebody here was showing us all the fun things, and they were, a 5th grade teacher, I think, was digging into it one time. And it just seems like a lot of work for the teachers to have to dig up, so I'm just wondering if there's some sort of a systematic way of
At
passing
grade
it
level
along.
meetings, when, would be a place where teachers share, they share materials, they share resources that they found. And that's when all teachers from the whole supervisory union are together.
And that's like once a year?
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
We also try to create Google Docs so that there's a 3rd grade Google Doc where people can.
Do all the schools use the same student data software? Well, that's good. And I think it's time for the new, seems like timely questions, because I think the tech program just is expiring, or not the tech program, the tech plan, the technology plan for the district. So those things could, all those things could be systematized and written down. And it's like reading it, you wouldn't, I mean, what you're talking about now and what that talked about is like, not 3 years, it's like thousands of years. It's incredible.
So that was a bit of a digression from where we were, sorry.
An important one.
No, that's okay. I mean,
Be careful what you say, huh?
But I wanted to bring that, bring that up because it's something, it's big. I mean, we have, a new hire coming in, but it's kind of short term, but it's still a new hire. And next week we have Winter Carnival. That's a traditional thing that I'm learning lots about, where kids are involved. It's not like outdoor, like winter, but it's more fun, filled with activities, and all kids get involved with. It's kind of a school-wide celebration of games, and the big kids actually create the games, and then and they run the games, and the little kids come down and play the games, and then there's arts and crafts, and that's what we'll do on the half day.
No dunking, that's in the spring.
No dunking stool?
It's warm enough.
Yes, it is. It's going to be a green holiday.
It's supposed to be 60 in Illinois on Christmas Day.
72 in Philadelphia Monday.
Is it? Mark, we're just talking about weather, sorry, we'll move on.
That's okay. Did our report get around?
Yes.
Yes.
So front page, basic statistics. We had a couple of students move out,
And move back.
and 2 weeks later, come move back.
Revolving door.
Yep. Important to point that out because that can happen periodically throughout the year.
So do those kids, as long as wherever they are that specific day, that's where they're counted for the state, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Our November PD day as well went really well. We had Brian Bittner in here working with the staff on Reading Street implementation and curriculum planning. So we did that for two days. It was really well received. Teachers had a lot of time to work collaboratively in groups, and also we had some visitors from Vernon Elementary and Putney and Guilford as well. So it was nice to make some connections with other schools. But all the feedback was really good from those 2 days.
Mark, did you do a formal survey? Did the teachers do assessments afterwards and
Yes, Brian.
feedback forms? Yeah.
Yeah, Brian did a feedback.
I haven't seen the results.
Yep, I
So
haven't.
my feedback is kind of informal from what I've heard from teachers, but.
Yeah, I'm sure Brian.
Our after-school extended day program is coming to a close as we get ready for the winter break. We will start back up on January 11th. For this fall, we brought in some new ideas. We've been focused on literacy and math instruction. We experimented with a fitness club in the fall.
That went well, didn't it?
Went really well.
bet
Yeah,
they had a
we
lot
had
of
about
kids.
60 to 70 kids participate. So this second go around in January, we're not going to do the fitness club again. We'll do that in the spring. We'll bring that back. But we're going to be bringing to the school a Lego robotics club,
Oh, that's fun.
which Shannon Rucker, our librarian, is going to be doing. So I'm excited about that. We're trying to turn the library into kind of just like the heart of the school. So beyond just checking out books. So she's creating kind of it's called a maker space in the back corner there. And we're gonna store our robotics Legos materials over there. And we're just looking for different ways to provide kind of STEM activities for students. So I'm excited. I feel like it's kind of progressing throughout the year. Student leadership-wise, student senators have been working diligently with Project Feed the Thousands, which comes to a close on Friday. They'll be at Hannaford's celebrating the Fill the Bus event. Pretty sure Academy and Oak Grove students will be there as well. We have a school goal of 1,000 pounds. We're at like 940 right now.
Is that all of this over there?
So I think
You should get this on camera there, that's cool.
Yeah, so the students, we had a couple of 5th grade students express an idea of wanting to play with the food and build a structure, so they built a tree.
Yeah, why leave it in boxes and piles?
Yeah, so that was kind of cool.
That's neat, better than Legos.
Better than Legos, there you go.
I talked in the beginning of the year about Destination Imagination as a program we wanted to bring to the school after school as well. So through a lot of effort by Tracy Benet Parent and reach out with parents, happy to say we have 2 teams that we've put together. A primary team with 6 students and an upper elementary team with 6 students. And we got 4 great parents who are volunteering to run the program. Sheila Humphreys and Solveig Kurowski for the primary team, and then Sharon Carlton Newton and Kira King for the upper elementary team. Last week they had their first practices, and I'll be reporting on that throughout the year, and maybe we can bring some more documentation to give you a sense of how that is evolving.
Maybe bring some kids.
Yes, yeah, because there will be a major performance that they, I guess it's kind of like a competitive process up north in Burlington, so yeah, it would be great to bring them in for a demonstration. Winter sports will be starting up the second week after vacation. A lot of work has been going into that. It takes about $9,000 to run the program. We set a goal for $4,800 in parent contributions, and we've met that goal, which we're excited about. Of course, our Tulip Trot event in the spring will help fund the rest of it. And just to talk a little bit more about the grant opportunity, we focused on materials and things to bring into the school for the remaining of the year this year. The following 2 years, the idea is to hire an assistant teacher to work out at the library with the librarian. And that focus will be on enrichment, collaboration, co-teaching with classroom teachers, and then a technology aspect of it too. So I think it's a great opportunity to play around with the new idea. It's kind of free money, and if it goes really well, make some decisions in the future with the budget to hopefully continue it if it goes as well as I think it could.
Jeri Carbo.
That's it.
So, Tyler,
I know. Might be
right
right.
now, time Frank's going to go. You have our report, if you have any questions or anything. If not, I'm going to give our Mr. Fund.
Oh, you don't want to use 3 minutes?
3 more for Frank.
Okay, good. Any questions of principals for the reports?
I have one thing just to add from the endowment for the winter sports. If you guys are saying that the 3 schools are getting a contribution from the Brattleboro School Endowment of $2 per child that's participating, so which we've done now for the 3rd year running. So the checks will be coming. I believe only Mark has answered to me with the number of kids. So your check will not come, Randy and Jeri, until I get a number. Send me a number.
How about on here?
Well, no, because it's not that number. I need to know how many kids are actually doing winter sports. That's all.
Oh, I see.
What's your last word? Sorry?
So we're on.
Yeah, if I can make a couple of introductory comments about the budget, I'll wait until they get around.
And then do you have any other administrative commentary?
No, I think
Sort of-
I'll cover mine under budget in Act 46, so I think I'll,
So I can cross off administrative report, and we will
Yep.
start again with policy council. Is there,
oh,
maybe while this is being passed around, is there any committee report from policy council, or we're gonna hear more from Deb?
Yeah, we have a meeting next Monday.
Okay.
So,
Energy,
yes.
so that'll go later on. Energy committee, any report at the moment?
No, not at the moment.
And finance,
I brought Frank for show and tell.
well, so we'll leave to, and diversity, any,
No updates.
No
Had a
updates.
meeting and working on spring events.
okay, so that takes care of that page anyway. So now we're on to Frank and the budget. That's BD and new business, eh?
yeah, let me just make a
Yep.
couple comments. So you should get two documents. You get the first draft budget and,
And a capital plan.
do we have another copy that we? Yeah, and the capital plan.
Yeah.
And so Frank's going to talk about the format. I know we talked about this in the fall when he did a kind of the current budget update and gave it to you in this format. So it's a little bit different than when you, like what I do is I compare it to last year's and then I start marking it up for the first new year. So it'll be a little bit different. There's a lot of changes in terms of changing the accounts. So Frank will need to show you that. I just want to tell you that when you go to page 15, and it's the overall budget, first draft, and this is after a lot of work with the principals, Frank, Lyle, and the special ed administrators, that it's down 53,000, 0.3% reduction from last year. And
Is that
I
where it
think-
was down last year too? It was almost like
It might have been.
52,000.
But I think for the first draft, that in making some assumptions and changes, I think we're in a really good position because I was thinking it was, I think when we first started looking at numbers, it was like 2.5% up, which in some cases would be normal. But, so I just want to credit the principals working with Frank directly. I know it's a really short cycle when we get the ADM numbers or the equalized pupil numbers from the state. That was delayed by at least a week. And then Frank is trying to get the SU budget done along with the other district budgets, BUHS probably the first. It's a big, big job, so I appreciate the principals jumping in as you could, when you could. And a lot of credit to Frank for putting a lot of hours in on this. So, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So it is a, you're right, I just looked at last year, same number, basically, 0.3% down, 55,000 last year, similar. So in general, you will see that this is a relatively stable proposal relative to the current year. As Ron said, what we had talked about as a group quite a while ago, we're trying to allow a focus on the school level in terms of financial resources and the way we use them, and then within the school, the program level. So school level is obvious to you. Program level, I've sent you a few AOE documents that says the way I have to capture information and report it on your behalf. That is the control document that I have used to design these financial reports. And so basically what we're looking at is program 100. When we look at numbers, it's the regular education program. So we'll review what that is, but it's primarily instruction. And it's the regular operations of the educational program. Program 200, you're familiar with special education, of course. You will see the data set in this format. It's what do we do for instruction and the various functions within instruction and regular education, and then the data goes to special education. And in general, that's what we do in Brattleboro town. Other districts might have adult education. We do have a little food service activity here, but so the organization of this report is school level first, and then We go through instruction, we go through special education, we go through all of the functions that you're familiar with. So when we're done, I'm pretty sure you'll be pretty familiar with the programs that we're going to describe. So on the first page, we have all of the programs associated with the district-wide school. So on the far left-hand side of this document, upper left, you got a school there, 00. It's district-wide. That's the convention that has been in place. District-wide means it's a resource that serves all schools, not easily allocated to a particular school. So right here at the very beginning, we have a subtotal. You see regular education about just halfway down the page. This is 1,100 regular education instruction. We go over to the far right column, see the draft, FY17 draft. We are on that column?
Well, I see 1,100.
And I just want to...
From the left.
Oh, the number.
Yes.
Yeah, the 00 district-wide.
Numbers.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So once we get familiar with this format, it will repeat, and I think it'll become familiar. 1,583,000. You see that number in FY17 draft under regular instruction. Okay?
But who's in regular instruction
Yes.
district-wide?
So this is what that represents. That is foreign language, it's your music, your art, physical education, gifted and talented. So I do have a...
It would be art even though they're in each school?
Yeah.
You guys share? Okay. So it doesn't matter, like Academy's art then is over here too, even
Yeah.
though Academy has their own art.
Those have always been in district-wide.
Historic
Yeah.
relationships.
So what we talked about last year, and I'm following through with that, is instead of bearing you with the detailed report, the 35, but it's available if you want it, and if it helps facilitate the conversation, we'll just roll it out. What we talked about is that tends to obscure the core of what investments we're doing, because you've got so many lines of detail that it's like, what's this, what's that, what's that? This rolls things into a school, and then a function. What are we accomplishing? So regular instruction is a function, and it's represented by those programs: music, art, phys ed, gifted and talented. And in general, you see that change, 47,000 for regular instruction, up higher than what you've seen in total. So you'll see there's pluses and minuses in every budget. The big increase in this group is it also includes the pre-K, universal pre-K program. So getting into a little more level of detail, just the third line down on this data set, right on the first page. So we've got salaries of $721,000, we have benefits of $295,000, we have contracted services, $495,000. Those are the pre-K payments to our private providers and to early education services. So you see that's up $77,000. Everybody follow that?
That's pass-through money?
No, it's universal pre-K, and what it means is we will count those kids that we are cutting a check for $3,000. There is no revenue that comes to the Brattleboro Town School District.
The state didn't own it.
That's changed. Other than now, it's the equalized pupils that we get credit for, which is the plus.
Yep. And now I remember we always spent money on that.
Yep. And also, David, I think you raised a good question last year on the topic. It's like we just talked about 703 kids from the principal reports. How come equalized students is 800 something? one of the answers is it includes these pre-K kids that we pay for, and that is the way the tax rates are set, but there is no cash flow back to us. It's cash flow out, tax rates set based on kids divided by cost. So that's a significant increase, and it accounts for the majority or all of the increase in this group. Okay, so there's reductions, but those reductions are offset by that big increase in pre-K. So that's the major change in that program. I know we just have a half hour, so I'll kind of go through this in a summary level, and then we can go back through again in any level of detail you like. So the second group, the 2100, you see just a couple of lines down. I'm looking at the left side. 2100 student support services, so that's your guidance, your nurse, and your clinicians. I know you're familiar with those folks, and no significant changes. You look at those costs. You might ask, you might wonder, what do we do in the 300 group there? Those on the left side is the contracted services. What are we doing for 100,000, 110, 104, 105? Those are our clinicians that are in our schools, work with our teachers' kids. Okay, so we go to page 2, and you see we still got that 00 on the upper left. That means we're still in the district-wide, these shared programs. And the 2200, we're going to now talk about primarily professional development. Okay, so the very first line you see on the top of page 2, it says 2100 student support services. So that's adding up the nurse, the guidance, and the clinicians. Okay, not much of a change. The next group is the instructional support services. So this is the training money that we just talked about here. How do our teachers share knowledge? How do we learn? You see the total on that group. Convention you might be already starting to see is when you hit that bold line, that really dark bold line, the number below that is a total of everything above it. So 78,250 is the current operating budget for professional development for district-wide, and we're going basically a similar budget. Not much change.
So could you explain the actuals in FY15? It's a low figure, it's like 18,000, and was that because of the shifting of title money or Title IIA or anything related to that, or is that just not accounted for in the right?
Yeah, what it represents is we have the convention, and I think we'll continue it. Is we budget in a service area of the budget for professional development. 300 series means contracted services, but often our payments are to our employees. So we have to report payments to a salary account. So there is this sort of we can't predict which teacher is going to sign up for the course that we pay them for as part of 1%. So we budget in here, and it may come back as being paid in here, or it may be in the salary accounts that you'll see. A little bit different.
And that could be 1%, it could be course reimbursement. Yeah, so.
Okay, staff development, that's that. Administrative services is the next, that 2300. You hit the bold line and you see we're up $1,200 or 0.2%. So that reflects the supervisor union assessment. And
let's hear that again. The SU assessment is up 0.2%.
Did you hear that again?
Golf clap.
Okay, thank you.
And that was reviewed by the supervisory union board and the finance committee on several occasions.
Great job.
Good. They worked right. Thank you, Frank.
It's not anyone we know or anything
No,
either.
of course not.
Okay, moving right along, operations and maintenance. This is an area that I just didn't have time to restate, so it's a difficult thing to follow, but it will be easy for you to see next draft. But basically, the issue is in maintenance of plant in district-wide. We really don't have a reason to have much in district-wide because we know who our custodians are, where they are, and we pay them, you know, generally at a location. The convention has been to put benefits in this group, so, you know, I'm going to undo that, but that's why you see some real big variations. Overall, it's a pretty level funded
The custodians are hired by to be in each school, right?
That's
They
why he's
don't,
going to switch it.
they don't float between the schools?
There is one employee that does, and there will remain maybe $80,000 in here for the one who serves Estiville, Canal Street a little bit, and Powers House. So that employee will stay in this. But
And that money represents other services, so.
that's right. So when we look at the total for district-wide,
So are there substitutes for
Yeah.
custodians too, if somebody's out?
Yep. I would just say, let's hold off in this section.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
see it in the second
Andy's
draft.
giving me a look. Are there substitutes for custodians?
Not presently. We try to have them, but we don't have any at the time.
Well, you know, we had an issue last year, and Andy was nice enough to share one of his guys to do some work with us, so we kind of share in the buildings if we're in a hard spot, or we have.
But if somebody's out for an extended leave or something with a surgery, we would have a hole.
Well, we have replaced people for a period of time.
I don't know how that works.
Yep, so in general, you'll see the plant operations are pretty level funded. So then debt service, so you know that we have quite a change in debt service, so that just scrolling down the page, it's on page 3. And, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over transportation, that's a significant expenditure. You see transportation right above it on page 3.
Why is that up? I thought we contracted for 3 years
Yeah,
at a time.
5 years. And
Okay.
I've learned that there's an extra bus run that was being charged to the after-school program, and I'm making sure that it's allocated to and from school, because that's what it is, right?
Yeah, so we've been paying that, it just hasn't been
In this group.
assigned to this group. So now this reflects that.
So I'll rephrase my question. Are we paying more in transportation than what we negotiated in our contract?
Not the rates, but the
No.
routes. There's always.
We have an additional bus, so we have a fee per day that we need that bus.
So it's a
And that's what
We
reflects.
changed, since we negotiated out the contract, we changed the number of buses that we needed? That's what it's
We
going on?
change based on the number of students and the routes, and otherwise, kids don't get home in a timely way. So,
Debt service down substantially because you probably knew that this is the year where the bond that was done in 1996 is a 20-year period has passed. We still have a year on the energy improvement, and there's another project that still has some time ahead, but I gave you a handout on a capital plan. Maybe we'll come back to this topic, but knowing that obviously any asset that gets paid for a bond has a useful life. Generally, once a bond matures, there are a lot of assets that are ready to be replaced. So the next line down, we'll want to talk about this further, I'm sure. But I've added 220,000, which is the same amount of that reduction, so it's kind of a wash. You see, I took away 221 in a bond payment, and I've added it right back in under the transfer to the reserve fund for, the intent would be for capital projects.
So that's the other use of funds?
Yeah.
5,300, 900?
That's right. Yep. The 7,600 is in the comparison year under that other use of funds. That's I'm pretty sure that was for anticipated debt payment for the Academy boiler project. So I've continued that, and then I added this 220. So 76 plus 220 is the 296 in total for that group. So maybe we'll come back to the discussion on that after we look at the capital plan. After-school program, this generally, most of the money for after-school program is in the schools, and I will do this as well. I will move this money to the schools so that it's easier to evaluate what's happening with after-school by looking at a school and looking at all the resources. But at this point, the 35,000 and then the 12,000 for transportation is our after school. When we flip the page to page 4 at the very top, we see the total there, 47,000 in this budget proposal, basically the same number as the current year.
47,000 for food?
No,
No.
it's after school.
Food
Oh,
is
it's underneath the,
yeah,
that line.
underneath, yeah.
And then the 12,000 for busing.
Yeah. Okay. So we're almost finished with district-wide. We've got two more programs. We have program 210, the special education. So we've switched from program, well, actually, oh boy, yeah. We've got our special education program, and we've got the assessment from the SU office. Again, this is what was reviewed by the SU board, and this represents the teachers and the paraeducators, the tuition costs if we don't educate a student here or at any of our schools. That's the comprehensive program for the SU. You see that.
Just read those numbers. That's the 3093.
Yes, 3,093,131. When that's it looks like a large increase, but as soon as we go through the schools, you'll see that this is a substantial offset to the spending because employees have been moved to the schools.
Is this represents the paraeducators that are switched to the SU budget?
Yes, this is part of the STEP program that's intended to replicate the successful model at Academy, essentially for the supervisory union. Okay, so that is district-wide. If you look at the 00, kind of right above Canal Street on the left there, 00 district-wide total, $7,148,000. Pretty even budget. Most of it is special ed, right? And nearly half is special ed. And then we just reviewed everything else, and the everything else, the big thing is the itinerant, educational services, the foreign language, music, art.
Really the pre-K and the special ed.
Yeah. Okay. Now we start looking at schools, actual physical, the location and the financial resources that are assigned, dedicated to fund the good programs that we have. Happens to be the convention was to assign Canal Street School as a 1 and Estyville as a 2 and a Green Street as a 3. So there's not much there for Canal and Estyville. We can come back to those, but we only have 10 minutes to get into the really good stuff. So Green Street. Focus, of course, is on instruction, classroom instruction. So we're back into regular education programs, and we're looking at classroom instruction. That 1,100 regular instruction, now again we're kind of repeating the format, so hopefully this is starting to get a little more familiar. You got that bold line, 1,457,000, up 28,000. 2% difference. So So a very similar program. You know,
And just to say, when you look at the salaries, they're down. That's reflected in some turnover, and then the big increase is the health insurance. That's the benefit jump. So that's reflected in the 2% increase.
that's right.
And the 12%, 12.8% is the
And
supplies?
Supplies, yeah.
So what would be in the supplies that's so big?
Well, it's a, yeah.
Or was
it's
that the
because
books
it's
that
a
are going to be purchased on the grant?
Some new desks.
Yeah, stuff like that. It's really only $7,000 difference.
Yeah, it's,
But when we get into the more of the details of the line-to-line for each school, I can speak to.
Is that any electronics like
No, it'd be more like desks,
Chairs.
bookshelves, things like that, new chairs, equipment. Yeah.
You had some carpets that you wanted to get rid of
Yes,
too.
that's, I think it's a different.
That's going to be in maintenance, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So that's our Green Street instruction, classroom instruction, and then we go to the 200 group is our library. See that at the bottom of page 5? So, salaries down. I think we had a new person, right? Yeah. So, other than that, library is a similar investment. We go to the next page and we start on the principal's office. So the Green Street principal's office, you see, is slightly down. That first bold line, you got a subtotal down $949 for the prior year.
Some of that's reflected in secretarial staff that is assigned in a different spot, inappropriately.
So now we're into the building costs at Green Street. Okay, so I'm on page 6, and I'm looking right under the 2,400 subtotal for administration. Now we're into the Green Street building, and this is where you see $345,000 as a proposed budget. We mentioned I will be bringing in all of that money that we talked about up at district-wide. Like you see in the comparison year, the fiscal year 16 budget, there's no money in there for benefits, right? We know that's not what's happening. So the benefits are in a different place. I'm going to get that consolidated so we don't have to have this conversation again. But if you took away $46,000 from the $54,000 increase, you see it's not a substantial difference. Okay, pretty level funded. And then David, you were saying, things like carpet. You see the repair and maintenance, $137,000. So that's those sorts of expenses, along with a broken valve, a repair unit ventilator, lots of different repair expenses. After school programs, I mentioned there you see it. That program 140 it has a total of 503. Okay, so very similar to the prior year.
And that's really the tutoring stipends.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, the subtotal on that was on page 7. I jumped the gun a little bit. The subtotal on that is top of page 7. You see the big bold line, 140 after school program total, 24,688. Then we have our academic support investments. So that is this program 150. So if you go down about halfway down the page, you'll see a 150 Title I instruction total, 462,000, and that compares to 417. So relatively level funded program there for Green Street. And then we're into the special education services. And this is where I mentioned, so we're up significantly in the district-wide because that's the money coming from the SU. Well, the SU's taken some of the Green Street employees, so there's a negative 83,000. There's part of the offset. We're going to see more of the offset in Academy and in Oak Grove. Next page is the total of Green Street. So Green Street essentially level funded, down a little bit based on those programs. So we have Oak Grove, you see page 8, left side, Oak Grove, we have the same format now. We'll zip right through this. And you get your instruction, down a little bit. There was some turnover there, right, Jeri? In the regular instruction, as I recall.
Yeah, I think it was because of some title law switching.
Yes, that's right, yeah. So we've got our classroom teachers there, slightly lower budget. We have our library services as the 2200 group, down a little bit because again of turnover. And then we go to the administration on page 9, and we have that actually up a little bit because of the benefit change. But the rest of that is similar. Operations, same explanation. When you adjust for health insurance, you'll see that that's not a substantially different budget. After school program, it starts at the very bottom of that page and then rolls over to page 10. And then that's just a $4,700 budget there. You see in the middle. We have our special eds. You see the special ed is down 109,000. So now we're pretty much less than the prior year with when we're adding up these variances. And then Oak Grove total, middle of page 11. Total is down 28,000. But remember, some of the maintenance is going to come in and it's going to make it kind of level. And then we do the same analysis for Academy. We have our instructional classroom teachers. Page 11, down a little bit. Again, I think there were some retirements and some turnover. Some assignments between academic support and the regular classroom teacher. We have the same library, school administration, maintenance, bottom of page 12, top of page 13. We have our after-school program, our title investment, $621,000. That's on page 13. That is up a little bit. Special ed, you see it's down 130,000 on page 14. So now we're less than prior year when you look at the increase at the SU level, and we have the reductions here. There you go with the end of the story. Very last group there is, well, Academy total down 95,000. For most of that you see is special ed, and special ed in itself is down 130, but it's coming back to the whole system as part of that assessment. Powers House last school, there you go, and then here's our total that we started with on page 15. Budget down 53,000. That's it.
Well, pretty good time.
Yep, pretty good. So that's first draft. There'll be some adjustments that we need to look at and formatting that will be a little bit different.
In previous years, we talked about the White House at Academy and had big discussions about the roof, and we replaced the roof right after we chose not to put money in the budget because it leaked. But the building was passed. It's in the capital plan.
It is in the capital plan numbers. Pardon? Yeah, I started with 640,000 divided by 10 years. So I started with a $64,000 investment. But I do want to talk about what we need to do is roll up the capital plan, get a sense, do we have enough projects, as you've done in the past, to aggregate into a bond an amortization schedule? Or do we want to just fund a reserve like the high school has and draw from that reserve that pays for projects as they come online? That's kind of just a strategy thing that we can talk about at the next meeting.
Is it a percentage of our present budget as much as in the high school?
No, we don't have a reserve balance in capital specifically, but the good news is that a lot of the debt is coming off the books soon, like that 220,000, and it's time to formalize a plan that says, here's our investment going ahead.
So we could do that, or we could do some.
We could.
I understand.
So we'll be back at the next meeting to update this, go into more detail.
Like you mentioned, the old format was available. I wouldn't necessarily need to see that. I would just like to see a few more years of if it's possible to slide it into this format fairly easily of budget and actual.
I will work with Jim on that, because I know he's assisted me with the origination dates of a lot of the long-term projects that precede this. So you see a reference to a project with no money in it, and it's because it's not within that window.
Right.
But I think that would be very valuable for the historical.
So you're talking specifically about the capital plan?
No, I was talking about
the budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
thought you were talking about capital projects historically, but you're saying we're going to...
a few more years of budget and actual in this, either in this format or this in the other format, so I can kind of see until we get this. That's a lot of work.
Right? That's a tough thing to...
I'll do it myself. No, I will. I can sit and flip the pages.
To get...
From here forward, it'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll get one every year. And then we'll have a long...
that's kind of what I've done, and you can, once the categories get changed, you'll see it.
Yeah.
But like for tutoring stuff, I wanted to make sure, okay, so here's the 87,000, the 35, and the 47, plus the 12, and I was able to do it, so.
Yeah.
If you spend a little time, that'd be great.
Okay, is it Paula?
I can see the percentages going down for salaries, but is this a normal amount of turnover? Just seems like a lot.
Yeah, I think our trend has been over the last 3 to 5 years, actually, some healthy turnover. You know, we've got 50% of our staff are veteran staff members, and so they're looking at retirement, and I know in some of the buildings, they've got some excellent new people to work with the great veteran staff. So it has been a trend.
Yeah, and it's mostly retirements.
What's it?
Retirements.
Is it mostly retirements?
Yes.
And then hiring sort of newer people.
Yes.
And I didn't notice, but is the budget for professional development increasing since you're getting newer people?
I think it does increase just because the demand is, like the transition to the Common Core required more professional development money, the Reading Street program, some of the other initiatives, it has.
We try to cover as much as we can in-house when we have teacher leaders, which we consider professional developments. They're experienced teachers that have activities and work with you, like here.
Thank you.
So, go ahead, Amy.
Some of the decrease in teacher salaries, I think may be due to, if I'm not mistaken, Ron would know this, that in the FY17 budget, there's no longer any payments for early retirement incentives, correct?
Right.
So that's sunsetted,
Ask.
which was in the last 2 budgets.
Right.
And I don't know what that number is. It must
Yeah.
be.
We didn't
would be
offer
at
any. We didn't offer any.
We didn't offer it last year, right?
Right.
And we have not talked about it this year.
Yeah, we'll have
but-
more time to discuss that.
So just a quick question, Frank. Paula brings up a good point. Professional development, course reimbursement, textbooks and programs, where exactly are those now under each?
Okay.
Just pick
so-
a school and tell me where to
Yeah,
look.
sure. So professional development is generally part of excuse me, a course reimbursement benefit. So it's going to be in the 200. So like on page 5, Green Street. If it's course reimbursement, associated with a teacher going to a course, then it's in the 200s. So you see like Green Street up 32%. I'm sorry, up 32,000, 9.2%. You see that?
Under benefits?
Under benefits, because a course reimbursement to the teacher is a benefit.
So it'd be under regular instruction benefit.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so the benefits are health insurance, dental insurance, and course?
Course reimbursement. But the other area is where we were talking about earlier. There is an entire code. It's on page 2.
Yes.
Top of the, just below the top.
2,200
Yes, that entire budget is professional development.
professional development. Yes.
That's that 78,000.
So where does it
Yes,
say professional
district-wide.
development?
It's-
It doesn't.
It
Well,
doesn't support,
he told us.
Yeah,
that's
support
considered us.
services to staff is professional development, as opposed to support services to students, which is your nurse and your guidance. Professional support services for the staff is professional development.
Textbooks.
Textbooks are in the 600 category, so if we go to a school, go back to Green Street on page 5. Textbooks are part of the supply budget.
The regular instruction.
Yeah, and actually you were asking about that earlier, that $6,500 increase is partially textbooks. It's mainly supplies in textbooks.
Because we used to see like a breakout of library materials and textbooks and then AV and something else, and I never knew what was going in, and even like music and instrument replacements and all of that. We used to see that stuff. I don't,
Yeah, so all
all
of that
lumped.
is captured separately, and that's part of the 35-page document that if you wanted to see that, it's very easy to do.
All we need is a guide, a small booklet that says, list the various categories that Jill just
Sure.
mentioned and say, go see.
That's
such
what
and
that's what that PDF document I sent to everybody, but it's,
I'm not remembering
it's,
this PDF document.
I'll resend it if you like.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that, but
Was that the 60 page?
Yeah, I had Jean Gilbert forward it, so.
oh yes,
You
Guides and acronyms.
I do.
Yeah.
I do remember seeing this then. It was
I don't
over
write
my
it.
head, Frank.
I don't write that one. That's it's actually a federal and state, requirement for
It was,
public.
I believe it came with the heading of something like, you will look at this later, and I said, okay. That was all I did with it.
So now's the time to look at it.
Yeah.
Now is later.
Except we're not looking at it, so I didn't connect it. Okay.
Punch a hole or put a chain, carry it in your pocket.
So that answers all of that. Okay, so then it is a little bit after 6 now with our questions. And we said at 6 we would go on to Act 46. So we wanted to just bring everybody in the room up to speed on what the Act 46 study group has talked about. And we continue to meet. And
We meet tomorrow night.
we meet tomorrow night. And I actually went to a small group breakout on programs today. And did you have something you already
I
wanted
have
to do?
materials that we can distribute of the minutes of the meeting, last meeting if you want.
I have those with me too, but maybe. And Dummerston has already done kind of and Lyle was there, so you can probably describe it a little bit better, but an actual community forum where they've talked to people and answered that. And we're thinking we would do that, I think we talked about that more in January for us.
Yep.
But I think this is the same thing for that, yeah. So, in general, what we've decided so far is that anybody can jump in here, that we needed to decide which type of possible merger we would study to move forward. And the way the law is set up, what makes the most sense is you start with the one that has the largest incentive and then kind of go through this whole worksheet.
And the shortest deadline.
And the shortest
Yes.
deadline. And there's a worksheet, and we step by step go through that, and you look at that and decide whether it makes sense when you get done. That particular one, what is the official name for this one? The accelerated. yeah.
Accelerated measure.
And if we do that one, we would be eligible as a supervisory union for each town to have 10 cents, 8 cents, 6 cents, 4 cents, 2 cents over those years.
And we'd
Of an
like Frank to
incentive.
show that document
Yep.
when we finish the overview.
And so that's what we're actually looking at in the moment, and to see whether that makes sense. And it has very specific questions, like how would it affect your programs? How would it affect, what would you do from legal standpoint or contracts or any specific goods or properties that you own? For example, Putney has a forest. We have the solar purchase option out there eventually, or whatever. So anyway, we're working through that, and the meetings are now being televised by BCTV if anybody is inclined to watch that as well.
There are a couple of other things that are on that plan about how you are going to be, how you're going to be transparent, how you're going to engage the public, how you're going to meet the quality standards, and how you're going to assure equity, which are pretty important aspects of it.
Right, those are all questions in the worksheet that we're
And plans
going
that are
through.
being developed, or responses that are being developed.
Yeah, actually, Lyle probably show everybody tomorrow night, but she started to work on the equity and the programming. And then I had some questions that I sent on today already to the folks up at the state level of exactly what does equity and programming mean?
Oh, good luck.
And I was really specific in my questions. And specifically in my mind, the question that I've had since I've heard about this is Brattleboro, one of the other towns, calls us the Golden Schools and has a lot of different offerings that some of the other schools do not. For example, foreign language instruction during the day. We're the only ones that do that for the elementary kids.
Well,
For the elementary
Emerson does
kids.
some of that, and Putney does some of that.
Not for the elementary, according to the program sheet I just looked at again today.
Yeah, it needs to be updated.
Change the sheet. But anyway, so, and then we have also, we just looked at it. And then the behavioralist is another area, and how we would, that's kind of being worked through with the supervisory union right now, but is a difference. And what were the other ones that we talked about?
Extended day, extended year.
And after school. So my question to the state today was, so an after-school program, for example, I don't think that they would say that, but is there consideration of equity that every single school in the supervisory union would offer the exact same programs? Can they be, an option for everybody and then people would choose? The other big question that I asked them is school choice. And I'd like to have a clear definition on what it means for Vernon. And even just among us, at lunchtime here today, Lyle, were we 6 people? And I think we had 6 different understandings of what would happen to school choice and how that might play out. So I'm asking.
Donna Russo Savage is the
Yes,
person
that's
that used to
what I
be the
thought.
legislative aide on legal matters, and now she's actually working for the Agency of Ed. She's given us a document, and we talked with her.
On school choice?
Last week, yes, about Vernon in particular. So I have some material that we can share.
That was good because we didn't know about that today.
Alice should have known that, so, but we'll have that.
Anyway, so those are the types of questions that go on in a really fascinating format of how many of us are there?
9+ visitors and
Alternate
staff.
type folks.
Yeah.
So there's usually about 15 or so in the room, I think, with all sorts of different questions and trying to wade through and think about it and try to figure out what is that they, and the point that was driven home again today is that what's good about this whole process is 2 things, for sure. One is that it forces us to look at what is going on in our supervisory union in a different way. What do we consider equitable? What do we see as results? What do we think as a concern? And 2, it brings the school board members in a very different way for discussion. Because up until now, that has not been what we talk about really at our meetings. And if we have a specific agenda and we go through stuff that's not so focused on the outcomes as what we are doing when we're doing this.
It also, the work of the committee and the subcommittees in terms of coming, like the the program across the SU, the, efficiency and equity, the accountability, transparency, all of the things that are required that the committee's doing. We can do those even if we don't become the preferred option, the accelerated plan, because all the other options, including not changing anything in terms of governance, include having to do that kind of report and make sure you're working on those things, and will be assessed just like every other.
And that brings up another point that we talked about today, that this programmatic small group that met today is going to bring to the full group tomorrow to discuss the possibility of, probability, I think, of looking at two options kind of at the same time, so that we're not, I mean, the process is that we're first looking at this accelerated, but to understand while we're looking at the accelerated, that if we did this other option, what's the other one called?
Conventional.
Conventional. Well, it's because the accelerated and preferred has two names, and then I get confused.
Two names for the same thing.
Yeah. So the other conventional one, kind of looking at some of those implications at the same time, and I think Alice might talk to you directly about that, so that people kind of understand a little bit more while we're looking at it what types of decisions we're making. So is that clear as day to all of you, or clear as mud? Anyway, all right, so I'm done.
I was going to pass out the financial model that Frank's going to put up on the board. Do some of you have your copies from?
I didn't bring it tonight, but yeah, I have it.
No. So over here, you might have to.
We can share up here.
Yeah, I'll share.
You and me share one. I have mine. You do.
Okay, great. So I think there's enough.
46. Now I understand what Ian Torrey wanted to bring forward. He was under no circumstances to be there. Does he have the only other? This is the disclaimer that it was okay.
Oh, I suppose that's true. That is a good point. What tomorrow night at the meeting, who all is coming? You coming?
Yeah.
You're coming?
I'm coming.
I'm coming. You coming, Kim? So then we can replace Ian. Tori can't be there, but he's a Brattleboro representative, so you're becoming a voting member, Toronto, if we vote on anything.
That's why he did it.
Is that not?
Did Paula get one, or is she gone?
You don't think that's all right?
Oh, she's gone.
Ron's giving me a look.
I don't know. Those two are signed.
That's true,
as
though.
representatives
They're
of
listed that
Brattleboro
way,
Union High
but they're
School.
not really that way.
Yeah, I know,
We're the
but
only
they are
ones that have a
assigned
replacement.
as Brattleboro Union High School. Well, I think it's misstated there.
I think he's right, that it's misstated, because it was two from the Brattleboro Union High School.
Yeah.
He
So
approached me, so I guess it was based on
if
this.
Ian can't come, can you confirm with somebody tomorrow if they want two people? They need to send somebody else, because they don't have an
They're
alternate.
not going to have somebody for tomorrow. And I would say in terms of any sort of voting, it's not a big issue.
Okay. We just want to make sure we're following the same.
I don't think your board would have three votes.
I don't
More
think we
than
have
three
anything to
votes.
vote on tomorrow anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But I don't see that as an issue for tomorrow night.
okay. Just want to be clear, so that we do it right.
Yeah.
Okay, Frank, we're all looking at you then.
We ready to look at a financial model? So,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. The group of educational leadership agencies in the state created or commissioned the creation of a financial model that essentially reads this Act 46, interprets the effects of Act 46 for the unique circumstance that each school district brings into the school funding law as we move through the years or the next 5 years. And it provides a comparison of if we do nothing versus if we choose this accelerated model. So this is not a comprehensive model, it's only a model to illustrate the accelerated Act 46 path. It's intended to illustrate tax impact and from a town lister's point of view, the impact of the aggregate amount of money that is appropriated by the town. So they provide this disclaimer. You have that on your lead sheet. This disclaimer basically is saying what I just said, and they also have asked, because it is a complex law, that we don't distribute the software because it can be easily misconstrued if we don't understand the implications of it.
Frank, can you make that smaller and show the middle paragraph?
Probably something about don't bank on this as a vision of the future. Or
It says created for the purposes of comparative illustrations and under no circumstances should be utilized to forecast future actual tax rates.
That's right, yes.
So it's, so these numbers, they're very movable.
They are absolutely, yep, that's just.
But there are some comparison information that's very useful.
Yep. And the primary, I think, reason for that is that they don't want people to think that it is that simple, that you can make these decisions and guarantee this tax impact because of the variables. So the inputs that drive the model, there are many variables. There's only 3 inputs, very few inputs. We'll spend just a little bit of time talking about those. It's our change in enrollment, and they are using equalized student enrollment. It's our spending per year, and it would be per student. And that is directly related to what we just talked about, our budget over time, how it serves kids, what do we think it's going to do in terms of future change. And then this is that equalized grand list data that is really generated from the listers, and that is managed through a select board oversight process, along with a lot of statutory requirements as to how a town values everybody's property value for the basis of raising school property taxes, which ultimately funds us. Other statistics are they're hardwired into this, things about penalties associated with changes in enrollment. This index that you may recall last year we talked a little bit about, it's an announced index that we compare ourselves to. You just saw our numbers around 15,000 per student. We compare ourselves to this number, 9459. The state announces a new number every year as part of the legislative process, has a major impact on our school property tax rate. Here's another index that they announced. If you read the tax commissioner letter that came out to school board members, they're saying $1 this year. They said that last year and then changed it to 99 cents. Then there are other cost containment provisions that are built into this model, and part of the law basically says if you spend more than a certain amount of money, then there would be a double taxation on that amount of money. It gets passed to the resident and to the whatever is subject to the school property tax. So those are some of the variables. We have the incentives that Ron, I think, just covered with you. This, I believe, adds up to about 30 cents over time, and this adds up to 20 cents, I think. So, what is the basis for the input? We talked a little bit about this at our study committee. It's those 3 variables. Here's a little bit of the data set that gives you background on those statistics. Why did we choose in the first example? Why did we choose negative 2% for change in enrollment? Well, to some extent, it's because of this data. Here we are over 13, 14, 15, 16 is data provided by the Agency of Ed, who actually maintains it, generates the equalization of factors. You remember, equalization means we count our 700 kids, we send them to the Agency of Ed, they include the preschool kids, they put weights on them to theoretically help us align resources with the types of students that we have. So they assign a 0.46 to the little pre-K student population because they're only there technically required 10 hours a week in order to qualify for a count. They assign, I think it's a 0.25 for students in poverty. They do the analysis on income data that obviously we don't have access to. Those are the things why we send 700 number to the state and it comes back to us 800 something. It's the equalization, because what it does ultimately is that would lower our tax rate if you have a higher student count. The higher the students for the same amount of spending lowers the tax rate because of the funding formula and that index that we just talked about. So those factors are calculated into this formula, and the basis is for a decline you see is based on historically. We have seen our school population going from 790 to 784 to up to 805, 821. So unlike the typical experience in the other towns, Brattleboro has been relatively stable. We just got a number, which I think is not worth thinking too much about. The preliminary equalized students that I just received from the AOE is 804. So, in that case, that's a 2% decline. And
So why do you have 821?
We'll see where that actually ends up.
Why do you have 821?
That's the number
Because
we
we're talking
had,
about 17.
that this budget is based on. That's the number that was in our report last year. That's our equalized
The
number.
state does a lagging number, so
Okay.
they use a prior year statistic for the future
Do
period.
you have the real numbers instead of the equalized students? I'm just curious, real.
We do have the real numbers. I don't have them on this screen, but I know we put them in our town report.
I know, but I always am taken by
Yeah.
surprise.
I've got a graph, but it doesn't.
I'd like to see them, I guess, ahead of time, Frank. So I did, and I'm curious for the whole supervisory union. Is it impossible to get that tomorrow night?
Ron, do you know if Barb has the whole enrollment? I think she does.
She does.
For students.
Could we look at that tomorrow night at the study group, just to have some real
It's available.
numbers?
Yeah, I think it should be available.
One other question, I don't know how quickly, could you, after we talk about this, could you just go up to the top and change the -2 to plus 1.3 and see what that does?
Yes, we can do that. Okay, so, I think, as you know, a lot of these changes reflect the fact that Brattleboro has seen an increase in poverty, and that is increasing your count, even though your real count has been declining.
I have another rough question, I guess.
Yep.
What's happened in Guilford and Dummerston and Putney? And some of these jumps in percentage of change in their budgets are a lot.
Yeah, and that has to do with, as you have a smaller population, a small change in enrollment has a much bigger impact. It's part of what the state recognizes is a benefit to a unified system. It creates artificial calculations and tax rates when if you are part of a K-12 unified system, a lot of these pluses and minuses will net themselves out to essentially a minimal effect. Statewide, we have seen a decline in enrollment though, so so have we here if you look at our whole SU. That's what this data says. You see when we look at the average, it's just continually gone down. This is the average, 396, 390, 378, so on. If we looked at the aggregate, same kind of thing. Same kind of numbers here. 2,700 and going to 2,659. So okay. So spending per equalized students. This is such a significant part of our tax rate. It's the central. It's the core of our school property tax rate. What do we spend per student? Doesn't matter how much you spend. Doesn't matter if you spend 10 million or 1 million. It's the tax rate is set based on how much you spend per student. So this is why so many smaller communities have really struggled with school property taxes, because what Jill was just observing, major changes in enrollment, you can't keep up with those changes in a school in terms of staffing adjustments. Because one year you know, you might have a classroom of 15 kids. In a small school, you might have 10 the next year. You're not going to lay somebody off for the 1 year and, you know, try to run a partial program. In a larger school, as you see in these statistics, there's generally more stability. But these numbers are just the opposite. They're going up. Of course, if spending doesn't change at the same rate of student enrollment, you're going to see what you see here. You're going to see, if you have declining enrollment, even if you have flat spending, no change, you're still going to see cost per student go up because, you know, $100 divided by 100 kids is $1 per kid. $100 divided by 50 kids is $2 per kid. That's what's going on.
And could you go to the next slide just to make this point? That's why we plugged in the 2% in the...
That's right here, negative 2.
Yeah, that's why we put in the equalized pupil, negative 2%, with the educational spending up 2%.
Right.
Because even though like our budget this year or last year was flat, because of the equalized pupils, it's still going to be down.
And those are for the whole SU?
Yeah, we had to estimate for the whole SU, exactly.
That is the other thing about this model, is it's not designed for inputs for individual schools. It's designed for a unified system. That's its purpose. So, yep, good point. We didn't put in 5%. 5%, you would see crazy, you know, do-nothing tax rate scenarios of very high tax rates. Unfortunately, that is what the smaller schools are seeing. When they're seeing average spending per student going up 5%, their tax rates have been going up.
So the do-nothing model assumes 2% increase all the time, every year.
At this point, we can change that to whatever.
But that is valid according to what you're saying for the supervisor.
Yeah. And actually, some of our small districts, we've had some budget years over the last 2 years where it's been a flat increase, and it's still up, like a 10% or 10 cent.
10 cents because of these enrollment numbers.
And this is all before the state assesses the extra pennies for the ed fund, right? This is only our budgets.
Yeah.
And if the do-nothing model, to make a comparison really correct, if our budget is really not moving at 2% up and we actually could keep it at, say, 0.5% or something, or in the do-nothing model, shouldn't it allow for Brattleboro to say that we're only going up by, I mean, to have real numbers?
Because our enrollment is dropping, the same effect is happening to Brattleboro town residents. Our school tax property rates will continue to go up if our enrollment number, we'll see where it actually ends up, but our current enrollment number, you know, as you know, unequalized, it's going down. It has been going down.
So I don't know if I'm asking the question right. When you go to that other one that shows your inputs of 2% or whatever.
Yep, right here.
Yeah. So the basic assumptions in here, in the way this whole thing is written, when the next sheet that we haven't looked at yet shows the total numbers, and the total number, there's a number on top that says the do-nothing model.
Yep.
And so the do-nothing model assumes that we have moved our budget up by 2% each year.
That is
in order
correct.
to come up with that. There's no
and
way
our
to
students
actually,
have gone down.
right, there's no way to actually play with this and say the do-nothing model.
We can. We can do it.
Well, wait, I'll finish. The do-nothing model, we would still be apart. We wouldn't be joined. So what would happen just to Brattleboro if we say we can keep our budget at 1% increase, 2% decline in student enrollment, as opposed to the join everybody model that's underneath here?
Well,
that isn't what's actually being shown to us, right?
Yeah, the problem is
That's what I asked Frank about earlier, about changing it to, can we make it, like if you look at the average of 0.8 and then the other, the last 3 years of our numbers, it goes up because we don't have as many kids coming in, but they're more from poverty. So if we changed it to that, and we changed it to 1% or 0, which is what our budget is this year, or minus 0.53 or whatever it is, what it actually is, we put that in, it would give us a totally different.
Right, but my point is that it's not going to give us fair numbers still, because it's assuming across the district to come up with those comparisons. It's using the same data to come up with the do-nothing and the bottom number to compare. And that isn't really what would happen. The do-nothing model, we would not be joined. So we would have a different...
Well, you wouldn't be joined, and you would be subject to all of these penalties that are coming our way. Like, the biggest one for us would be if we do continue to see this decline in enrollment. I haven't had a chance, David, to look at that Go student, little bank.
I was thinking it may have changed last year because of that big drop.
I don't know, but that is in itself a fairly significant penalty. They call it that hold harmless. If your kids drop more than 3.5%, then they're not going to hit you that hard for the 3.5. They're going to stop you at 3.5. So an example would be, 100 kids, 3% is only 3 kids, right? So they're saying if you go from 100 kids to 90 kids, they're still going to count you 97 kids. Mm-hmm. You're going to stop right there. They're saying, you do nothing, that goes away. Mm-hmm. And and then what does that do? It jacks up your cost per student. That's one of the...
I understand, but that's what I was hopeful that the model... So I don't think the model's really giving me the information that I would like to see.
You want tax rates, and it can't give you that.
No, I want to know what happens to us, or to Dummerston, or to Guilford, and the do-nothing model, assuming the realities, because that would be the do-nothing model.
I think we'll get an approximation of what you're asking. So let's look at that. One last data point is house education grand list values. So this is startling, I think, in that you've got Brattleboro going from a grand list of 5.1 million to 4.8 to 4.8 to 4.5. This is an average decline of 4%, and we're actually on the high end of the region. What does that mean? It means if this was the whole state, then the dollar, the 99 cents or the dollar that's set, it's based on property values. That how much will property values across the whole state raise to fund a $1 billion in public education in Vermont? If your basis for taxing goes down, your rate has to go up to raise the same amount of money. This is what is very alarming, that our region, the property values are declining substantially, and therefore, again, if our cost per student doesn't change, these tax rates have to go up a lot. Even if we do nothing, the whole thing about the CLA and all of that stuff, even if we do nothing in terms of spending, we just flatline it. If our property values go down, our tax rates are going to go up because the state has to raise the $1.5 billion on the basis of property tax primarily. So that's a concern, and we didn't put in a negative number there. We put 0, so we probably should revisit that. These are these averages that we were talking about, and here's the actual. When it says municipal, David asked a good question. What does that mean? Or maybe it was somebody else, I forget. But municipal means it's a combined town level. So if you have 3 unions in your municipality, you're going to get the combined tax rate, as opposed to just the school tax rate. And this is what really matters to the taxpayer. This is the rate they're paying. They don't pay an academy school rate plus a UHS rate. They pay one rate. The tax rates have been going up at this rate over the past several years, and as you were saying, Jill, what's going on? Well, 10% increase in Dummerston in that period.
And you feel like that's Dummerston and Putney with a 13.4. That's just to cover because of the decreased enrollment?
Well, that and whatever happened to their spending. So if they're spending,
but are they spending on?
No.
That's the question. No.
Like Putney is an example where their spending has been flat and down, and their tax rate's still going way up.
Because see how their cost per student went way up here, 15,000 to 16,700?
Exactly, that's what I'm asking.
Whammo. Why did that happen? Well, probably Putney had a decline there. You see that decline?
Well, 7 students.
Yeah, and see, that's the point. It's a small number of kids, but percentage-wise, it's a large percentage. That same 7 on 800 basis is just a small fraction. So kind of an alarming statistic, and on a statewide level, the policymakers are saying this thing's going to crash if something doesn't change with these kind of statistics. And then we have income sensitivity. It's so important that people understand that income sensitivity does get changed and indexed based on spending per student. So some folks think, well, if I'm subject to income sensitivity, it doesn't matter what the school spends, but that's not the case. Income sensitivity starts at 1.8% of everybody's income, and if we spend, remember that $9,400 number? If we spend twice that, then it's 2 times 1.8, which would be 3 point something, right? 3.6%. So if we spend 4 times that, it's 4 times 1.8. So that's how that works, and that's of your income. There's a lot of exclusions and tax law around income sensitivity, but that's the general concept. So here we go with background data, why those assumptions were chosen. Here at a glance, given the assumptions that you just saw, we can take a quick look at this, and then Jill, I think we can get close to your request. So here we are at Brattleboro town, and this is the school tax rate, because as a school board, this is what, to some extent, you have an influence as to, so basically it says if you go to your tax bill that you paid this year, it was $1.64. If we did the things that we just talked about with our FY17 budget, which means it was up 2% and we declined 2% in student enrollment, then we'd go to $1.74, assuming we didn't go along with the accelerated merger, $1.83 in 2018. So here's the money that a person with a $300,000 house who is not part of an income sensitivity calculation would be paying. They'd be paying $4,900, $5,200, $5,500.
Just on school.
$5,800. Just school.
No municipality.
So the difference between FY18 and 2020, those are the years with the incentive. I mean, we're not looking at incentives, but the increase there over those years is 1489.
Right.
So and I think, Joe, what you're trying to get at is the problem with this do-nothing model is that we know that we would never, like from this year, we know we're not going to go up $10 or 10 cents on our tax rate this coming year. So the 164 to 174, 173.99 it's not realistic. And we're not going to go up to, what's that?
What basis do you say that?
We just looked at a budget that's at zero.
Yeah, that's spending, but we haven't looked at throwing in the equalized student number and then calculating cost per student and what is your tax rate. So we haven't done that yet. So we don't know that yet.
But isn't that assumption of the 2%, didn't that assume that the cost, that we were actually going to put something in there?
Yes.
Which is a safe assumption and a fair assumption based on the other towns. But
well, based on our history. I think when we looked at that, we kind of looked at the largest schools and made those assumptions. And quite frankly, with the equalized pupil, it's probably going to be down 2, and the spending could be 0. But to put it at 0, I don't think represents accurate.
Yeah, don't do 0, I don't think. Right?
Yeah, go back and put
to the homestead.
The spending 0, but put the
decline in students.
Students at -2.
Right, I think that's a fairer, or even put us at 0.5.
Well, we went down 40 students last year, and our equalized number went up. So unless there's some reason to indicate
that's that poverty effect.
That's right, and there's no reason to think that's going to change.
Well,
I think you
it's
flipped
probably
it.
not going to
Yeah, I
keep
think
accelerating though.
You did flip them, Frank,
You flip, go back to that
on the
first page.
inputs.
So put the equalized pupil to -2 and put the spending at 0.
Okay.
Flip those.
Yeah.
And all of this is a guessing game, I mean.
Well, that's the whole point, is
Yeah.
it's for comparison and illustration, but not necessarily for...
Is that what we want?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. Okay, so we see,
Yeah, we get very little savings due to it.
yeah,
64 to 68 is 4 cents instead of 10.
And that's what you've been saying all along, you think?
And then it's 5 cents the next year instead of 10, and then it's 4 cents again, and then 4 more, is it? Or 5 more. I mean, those get, on the initial one, the 2 and the -2, it was 10 to 14 cents across the, 10 and 11 and 13 to 14 cents across the way.
yeah. Although, you know, you know more than I do, the issue for a lot of folks is the baseline's already too high, right? These numbers are already too high for a lot of folks. So it's a matter of changing the direction of spending. The other thing that the folks that were in the committee saw, and this is typical in a unification process, is the largest entity usually has the least to gain financially because you're already the lower cost provider. So to whatever extent you see collaboration with the other schools as beneficial, you're also creating a very substantial benefit. So as we'll see, our community that has the most to gain through collaboration is Dummerston, because as you saw, they have the higher cost per student. So the ones that are right now the highest have the most to gain in terms of a financial impact, and the ones that are the lowest, like Brattleboro Town, have the least to gain. But on the other hand, it is a gain. You know, it is a 10 cent, 8 cent, 30 cents over time. But on the Dummerston data, they're heading toward this $7,000-8,000 tax bill with the same property value, and if they can join a unified system, they're looking at substantial change in the curve.
Well, I made some charts, the tax rate increase and the year 1 tax savings charts from the original thing that illustrate that. And I did it because it says on the disclaimers that this is good for comparison purposes, but not necessarily for looking at the actual numbers. And it showed. I'll get those around. And could you pass one down to the camera person? This is aside. Well, no, wait, everybody gets a copy of that. I went over this a bunch of times, but that doesn't mean I didn't do something wrong. The only thing that I changed was the year 1 tax savings. I did it per 100,000 instead of 300,000 because that's more typically what people are used to looking at. But you can see that our taxes, the Brattleboro taxes, are scheduled. It would go up about 40 cents, whereas other Dummerston and Putney in particular would go up significantly. So, you probably see that. Yeah, you see it. So that wasn't correct. The last one I sent. And I don't think it's necessarily, it's not because Dummerston they're spendthrifts, or Putney either, that they spend so much more than us, but we get a lot of money because of the poverty. We get a lot of income that doesn't have to go on to our tax rate. I think last year you said between $4 and $5 million that we get through the feds and the state to support.
As a supervisor union, it's a little less than 3 million. Yeah, between the special ed, the Title I, the Title IIA.
I thought you said over 4. Anyway, it doesn't, significant. That's one of the reasons that we are able to keep our rate lower. I think the important thing to look at is the tax savings, because it's not a lot of money for Brattleboro. And if you just think about the law for a second, in the first year, not a large number of school districts are going to are going to go for the preferred model, and they're going to get this 10-cent reduction. And in order for the state to have that 10 cents, they have to charge all of us, they have to raise our taxes enough to cover that 10 cents because it's coming from the education fund. And in the second year, when the preferred option people are getting 8, and people that do maybe the conventional, or I think there's one other, the red option, maybe, I'm not sure, but if it's more like a quarter or a half of the school districts in the state, then the 4 or 2 or 4, or depending on how many districts do it, half of that, it's going to be an 8-cent benefit, but the state is going to have to collect that 8 cents. And if they collect 8 cents from all of the districts, enough to cover it from all the districts, we're all going to be paying 4 cents, and then we'll get 8 cents back. So it's important to look at this at the illustrative, the comparative illustration, rather than look at the numbers, because this is really what our taxpayers are going to want to look at, and they're going to be the basis of how people decide this. We can do the improvements, we can do the equity stuff, we can do all of those things whether we do this model or not. But if we do this model, we're going to see we're going to be paying, our taxes are going to be the ones that increase the most. And I think it's important that's made really clear to the community that everybody's going to be paying at the end of this, based on the model, everybody's going to be paying 210, and it's a much longer stretch for us to get to 210 than some of the other towns.
Well,
so that's kind of why I put that chart together.
So you know, I think that's a good point. But the thing about I agree that relatively Brattleboro is going to gain the least, but this illustrates at $100,000 house. The do-nothing model here versus joining a unified system, and this still it's clearly quite different tax rate. Is a $1.83 do nothing, $1.72 because of 10 cents. That's just as simple as that. And when you have almost no change in the assumptions around spending, but $1.94, $1.81, you know, $2.04. $1.90 now, that's kind of real money. That's $137. I know, having experienced floating a bond project, you present a 14-cent tax rate on folks for a bond, a lot of times it fails. You know, it's not like that's incidental. So I guess my point is that there's still clearly an advantage, assuming what they call cost containment provisions of Act 46 stay. We're going to get penalized if we don't join a partner.
Well, it's not if we chose to do basically keep what we have, or if a couple of districts chose to join together, we can apply. They can all apply for their small school grants. The Phantom students are gone over some number of years anyway, so that's going to be lost. Whether town of Brattleboro elementary schools have them or not, we didn't last year. It may be the 40 that we just lost over between last year and this year put us in that spot. But that's going to be gone anyway, and the smaller schools can retain their small school grants if they meet the same conditions that everybody has to meet to become to get the incentives. So, and then if everybody's getting a dime reduction on their tax rate, the state has to raise everybody's tax a dime to put the money in the ed fund to pay it back. So those numbers, and that's the problem with the spreadsheet and not being able to get the actual spreadsheet and look at the assumptions behind it, is that this may or may not be accurate. That's why I say don't look at the tax numbers, look at the comparisons. And the comparison, if we're going to go from 164 to 210, and somebody else is going to go from 170, whatever it is, to 210, we're going to be spending more. You know, our rate is going to go up more than
but on the other hand, the likelihood of a substantial number of systems going down the accelerated path is low, only because there's very few systems like Brattleboro that don't have the unusual governing structure and organizational structure. So Brattleboro is in a unique position to take advantage of this law, unlike the neighbors all around us, right? Wyndham Central, 5 towns have a K 7-12 choice. They don't go together with, so that would be, they just can't do it. That is not allowed in the accelerated model option. Brattleboro does not have that obstacle, so.
So you're saying you don't think as much, where Dave is saying it's going to have to raise taxes, and so he's negating some of this benefit because the state's going to pass down a higher tax. You're saying that's not going to happen in
Well,
your...
not to the extent that it's going to be half the state. They'll
No,
be,
not for the dime, but for the 8 cents, and the 6 and the 4 and the 2 going back down. I wouldn't be surprised if it were half the districts in the state. So it's, it cuts it in half. And then if more come on along the way, it cuts it even more. So that's, it's, with this model, the 111 for 100,000 in the first year with the 10 cents is, that's a reasonable assumption. But after that, the assumptions aren't really. And also because of the still with the rates, we don't know. I think this is the other reason that I think hurrying into this, and I've said this a bunch of times, that hurrying into this and doing it this first year to get that dime is really short-sighted, because we don't know, as you just pointed out, we don't really know what the equalized people is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen with it. My understanding is that the grand list is increasing a little bit. And although the homestead list is different, and I'm not sure exactly why, but at any rate, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with those factors. And if we have this information and we look at what actually happens before we decide to go for this thing, we can still go for the complete unification. We would forfeit that 10 cents.
What do you think we'll have in a year?
What's that?
You said if we wait...
We'll know if our equalized numbers have been pretty stable or gone up. And we're going to see whether that continues. If we continue to see a growth in poverty, which is indicated, then we will continue to have the equalized number go up.
But you think it's going to change in 1 year?
Could you go back to the variables again?
But I also think we're looking at it and we're not agreeing to it. We do owe it to look at it and do the accelerated, which is,
To
kind of
look
what you're...
at the model,
Right.
yeah.
But what you were just kind of saying is, I don't know why we're rushing into it, but we need to rush into it to look at it so that we can present that 10% and make that decision, yes or no.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the data that we have is pretty much speculative. The only thing we have for sure is that we know that Brattleboro will be paying more than anybody else.
But I don't see that Brattleboro pays more than anything else. I hear what Frank is saying still, and Dave and I have talked on this, and I still can't get it, that Brattleboro would be gaining the least. That, yes. But paying more, no.
No.
We would be gaining...
Saving the least.
Saving the least. And so I'm happy to save.
but you're still saving, yes.
I'm still saving, and that's where I'm happy to save. That's the part I can't get, Dave. I'm still stuck
Can
on
you
where
go
you're
back
at
to
on that.
the one you just did with the new numbers?
Mm-hmm.
That shows, well, again, we can't, if you look at those tax rates without any other factors.
These taxes.
Yes, yeah. Is it like, we don't know anything other than that number. We don't know what's going to happen with the assessment. We don't know what's going to happen with the homestead. We don't know what's going to happen with the equalized students.
Those are static, based on those
Right.
three assumptions.
Yeah.
So that's always the case.
Yeah.
That's always,
Okay.
every year we've always
So
had to.
when I look at that and I see taxes going up higher than any budget we would ever present, but I can't know that because the other detail, the other information that affects the tax rate is unknown.
Well, to say.
And the savings are based on comparing doing nothing and doing this. And the basis along there looks much too large to me.
But to say, based on a higher budget than we would ever submit,
There's no meaning.
It's hard to make that claim, though, how would you make that claim?
I would tend to think, to be able to do 3 years in a row of level-funded budgets, I don't see how we can do that. And assuming that 5 years out, there's no increase in our budgets.
No, I'm not saying no increase, but I'm saying not from $1.64 to $2.33. That's a 70-cent increase.
Again, so a 3% increase, 2.5% increase with the equalized students going down.
If
that's
that
a big
happens.
factor. Yeah.
If we don't know that that's going to happen.
Well, we look at the historical trends.
I know, I think we've got 5 years to look at. That's why I'm not sure why you say, well, if we'll know something more 1 year out. We've already got 5 years back or more. I mean, Frank's probably can go back and Our numbers, you went that and did that a couple of years ago.
Well, 15 years.
You did
don't wanna
15,
go
20
back.
years back, and we declined every single year.
Yeah, but we declined in real numbers, but we're talking, there's the graph, but we're talking equalized pupils, which is not the number of actual live
But
students.
that goes away if we don't do anything.
No. The equalized pupil don't go away. The hold harmless
The
goes
ghosts.
away, which we may or may not have any of anyway,
But I think a key point.
and it goes away anyway.
Is and Jill did a nice job reminding us that the 16 budget was up, down 0.3%, 0.03, 0.3%, down 55,000. That's what you're saying. That's the kind of budget we're going to present. Here's the results of that. Here's our current tax rate, municipal level tax rate, and we presented a lower budget, and our taxes still went up 3.1%. Went from $1.66 to $1.71.
Because of what the state passed on.
Because of all of these other variables that are built into this model. So the point about these project something that we wouldn't present and make an implication that therefore these rates are overstated, I think, you can see this is the trend. We've had relatively level budgets, and yet our tax rates have been going up, at a clip of nearly 4% on average a year. So again, it just illustrates the benefit of a unified system in this incentive, short-term, one-time only, till June of 2016 opportunity.
Okay, can you go back to the comparisons again? Yeah, I understand that, and I absolutely accept that the pennies going across the top don't matter. The other, I shouldn't say don't matter, it's not the whole story. The other thing is that the 5-year model is assuming some efficiencies and some savings.
No, it isn't. That's significant. That's a good point.
So how is it that where's the tax savings due to merger come from? Where's the money coming from?
Primarily the incentives, but there is no assumption about the fact that if we are one system, we would go from 7 audits down to 1. That we would do what we did in the special education model for regular ed, in that there is this ability to scale programs and then share resources that you can't do when you're separate employers, or it's very difficult to do. So none of those savings assumptions are in this model. The savings come from these incentives that say you will continue to have the hold harmless protections. You will continue to have, if you're a small school like Guilford, you'll get the $50,000, $60,000 in subsidies. And if we're part of that unified system, that revenue stream is part of our benefit.
Just like they get Title I, even if they didn't qualify it, because we're all together now.
That's right.
Assuming that we don't lose, that's another number that we should see at some point, is how many students you have that?
I checked with the state Title I people, and they said that we would not be losing Title I.
But how close is it?
Not close.
I still would love to see the numbers. Yeah, I love the assurance, but I know it's not. I don't consider them a reliable source.
You mean, like you'd like to see the numbers of students.
Well, you have to have 50% of the district, over 50% to qualify for Title I. So if we take
our lowest school, our highest,
the number I just saw
is 35%. So we're all very close.
I just saw that.
And you only have to be within 40% to actually qualify.
But we know the total number of students that we have in the SU in this Title I pool, or in the student pool, and then we know how many of them are Title I, then we can look at that and see how close it is to 50%. I'd like to see that number. The other thing that's not factored in here when they say the do nothing model, it's based on the idea that do nothing means really do nothing, that none of the three or four schools that get the small school grants apply to retain those grants, because they can demonstrate that they're meeting the goals of the Act. And that's the requirement. You have to demonstrate meeting the goals of Act 46.
So that would have an impact on their illustration if we went to Guilford, but their activity in a do nothing scenario.
But we don't get a small school grant.
Yeah, would have no impact.
So
but I
that
thought
won't have
this was
anything on
all,
us.
I mean, the 211, or the 210 at the end is based on what everybody's going to
Do
need.
nothing, it's just
Yeah,
us.
So if that money is added in, that's going to change.
Here's the unified system that we would become if we went the accelerated model. This is where the state has allowed different towns to come from different places and get to this common place. But the accelerated is the only one that says, like to Dummerston, if you have, instead of the Brattleboro town tax rate of, let's use 2019, $1.81, okay? Keep that in mind, $1.81. We go to Dummerston, and this is again where you're helping your neighbors and helping yourselves. See, that they would have the benefit of the $1.81, but they would be coming from $2.15, and without the accelerated, you only get to drop a maximum of 5%. 5% of $2 is 10 cents. So that's a substantial benefit that this is it's again it disappears that opportunity if we don't go the accelerated as of June 2016.
So it's 7:07. And for all of you who don't come to the Act 46 study group meetings, this is what the excitement is. Is trying to wrap our minds around it. But I think since we are going to meet yet again tomorrow, maybe we'll move on to anything else that was still on our agenda that we still want to try to get to. And I will remind you, we've been early at someone, so we're all owed a little bit of extra time because we have to get through it tonight. What else was on the agenda that we still need to do here?
Well, the update on universal meals is just, when we calculated it with cafe services and the people from the state, we knew it would be a big chunk of extra money this year that we don't have in the budget. I think we are planning on working towards it next year with some modifications of how we schedule the meals and that it wouldn't have a financial impact, a negative impact. So we'll just have to keep you informed as we plan this spring. We'll get the certified numbers from the state, make some projections in terms of numbers of meals, and get some analysis from the state. Honor, I can't think of her name, from Vermont Hunger has been very helpful with us. So we'll keep you informed on that.
Anything else, Deb, for open session, or before we need to go into executive session with her? Anything from anybody else that they wanted to have brought before the board? If not, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters.
Did we get the academy report?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
He said
Passed
he
around.
passed his time to Frank.
Yes.
I didn't get the paper though.
Oh. I can give you mine, because you always keep them. And so moved, and do we have a second? So then the rest of, all in favor?
Aye.
The rest of you can actually adjourn away. And really, truly, more exciting times tomorrow night for Act 46 for any of you. Like, and I guess I'm asking officially for Frank and Ron to stay for the executive session. I thought that was understood. Sorry. Will there be a decision? Yes. 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 We've risen from executive session, and now at this point I'd entertain a motion.
To approve the proposal that was raised by Ms. Gass with regards to the Head Start, early Head Start programs.
Refunding application.
Is that refunding?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Any further discussion? The understanding on this, of course, is that you'll send us a little bit of additional information on the cost of private preschools in the area. All in favor of this?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And now if I could have a motion to adjourn the meeting
So moved.
Second.
at 7:48. Everyone who wants out can stand up.